Momentum Monday.
Momentum Monday. We're going to coin it as Momentum Monday because we're talking about the two types of momentum and for marriedpreneurs.
Always for marriedpreneurs, specifically for marriedpreneurs.
I think that's so important because we were just talking about this kind of behind the scenes, the two different types of momentum. And then we were like, well, what's your definition? So the thing is, hey, fam, whenever we go live or even do what we're doing now as a pop-up podcast episode, we often will have to come together and say, okay, well, how do you define this? And then how do I define this? Because we can be coming from like two different sides of the same coin. And if we're not clear, the podcast can come out a bit confusing because we're talking about the same thing, but two different perspectives if we're not aware of it. So we had to make it super clear that whenever we are talking about whatever we're talking about, we are specifically talking uniquely to married entrepreneurs. And that makes a huge difference.
It makes a huge difference. Otherwise, this would be just another podcast for marriage or just another podcast for business. But because we're distinct and clear in who we're talking to, and you guys are here, so you know what you're coming here to get, to receive, to listen to
be clear on that.
Participate in. And by the very definition of this being marriedpreneur life, then it's obviously marriedpreneur. So
but I think it's really important that we're clear in our messaging, because as we are clear and then we help others become clear and not just assume, like we know who we are, but likewise, sometimes you can get tired of telling your own story, thinking everybody else is tired of it. But many times people haven't even heard it or they need to hear it again. So when we're talking about this, we're talking about momentum, building momentum, or the two types of momentum for married entrepreneurs. So we're doing a pop-up
podcast
episode right now, right? And so we're going to dive into it. We wanted to share this live as we came live yesterday, and we felt that was really beneficial for those who were able to hop on yesterday. Hey, fam. So good to see y'all in the building. So let's dive into this, shall we? It is Monday, and we call it Momentum Monday since we're talking about momentum anyway. So we're just going to do a full-on podcast. But the beautiful thing about this episode is that we'll be able to talk with you as we're doing it. We'll be able to get feedback and answer questions and, virtual high five, all that great stuff.
All right.
Okay, here we go.
Let's do it.
And
what's up, everybody? This is O.L. Buckley.
And this is Sway Buckley.
Of marriedpreneurlife.com. Yep, this is where we help mission-minded married entrepreneurs, those who want to get more clarity, generate more income, but above all of that, leave a lasting impact.
Yes, married entrepreneurs come to us to sync high-level systems with laser-clear strategy to build a solid structure for their legacy peaceably and profitably. Amen to that. Amen. So whether you are an indiepreneur, a spousalpreneur, or a couplepreneur, you are absolutely in the right place. And if you have no idea of what any of those marriedpreneur types are, let me break it down real quick for you. The spousalpreneurs are marriedpreneur couples where one spouse is working the 9 to 5 while the other is building the business. And then we have the indiepreneurs where both spouses are building individual separate businesses. And then there are the couplepreneurs where the spouses are building the same business together, whether or not they're working to 9 to 5, they're just building the same business together. So we are live right now, live studio audience on a couple of different platforms. So you may hear us shout out and talk back to people because that's what we like to do. So thank you. We have people praying for us. Thank you. Your prayers are with us and for us. So thank you so much for that.
So much.
To our fam over there on IG. We appreciate that. And back to you. Absolutely. So here on this podcast, we are here as legacy builders, here helping other legacy builders do what?
Build out their legacy.
And marriedpreneurs specifically, that's what we believe we're called to, whether one of you is called to entrepreneurship. We believe the family is called to entrepreneurship, and it's so much bigger than just us. So today we're diving into
the two types of momentum for married entrepreneurs.
Yes.
And just to make sure that we're all starting off on the same page.
Yes.
Coming from the same understanding, let's take a moment to define our terms.
That's good.
So we're talking about momentum.
Yes.
What does that mean? Now, we could go to a physics book and give you the physics definition of momentum, but we're not going to do that. we're going to give you just a layman's understanding of what momentum is, right? So momentum, simply, let's define it this way. It is the behaviors
and habits.
The habits. And I'm going to add one.
What else?
The initiatives that move you all forward. Yes. That's momentum.
Yes. And so we were talking about this before we went live, before we even went into this episode, because we're like, well, what are you thinking about when you hear the word momentum? And what do I think about? I was automatically thinking about business momentum, but then you lovingly corrected me and you said, you know what? Well, it could be business momentum, but if we're talking about momentum as married entrepreneurs, the thing that makes us different and so unique is that we are married. So we are building legacy. We can't just talk about a thing without mentioning the main thing is marriage. And that really, it colors everything.
Absolutely.
And it makes a huge difference. So when we're talking about the two types of momentum for marriedpreneurs, let's dive into this. Now, we talked about momentum and what that is. And I have my little notes here so I don't forget anything that we went over. We want to talk about good momentum.
Yes. First. And then second, toxic momentum. So there's good momentum and then toxic momentum.
Yeah. So when we talk about good momentum for married entrepreneurs, we're really talking about building in alignment with your vision, with your marriedpreneur vision. So let's go over a few things or signs that we would say, signs that you two are walking in this way, that you're heading out in the area of good momentum. Well, when we're talking about good momentum, love is absolutely the core of what it is that you all are doing. Your marriage is the core. Okay. And the business is being built to support the marriage, not the other way around.
Yep. So that is one of the clear signs that you all have good momentum. And that is that the business is supporting the marriage. And that is a specific sequence.
Very specific sequence. There's also a clear marriedpreneur vision, meaning, and that doesn't mean you have to know all the steps, but you all are clear about what you're building and you're talking through it. Even the things that are kind of messy, you don't even get it all, but you're talking through it and you're saying, okay, so what is our marriedpreneur vision? So it's not just a marriage vision, or it's not just a business mission, but bringing the two together to say, okay, what is it that God has called for us to do with our legacy? And what does this look like? Not just way down the road, yonder year from today, but what does it look like right now? What does it look like this week? What does it look like this month and this quarter? And so that's important.
Yeah. And so one more sign that really coincides with that is defining success for yourselves. Defining success for yourself. So you'll know you have good momentum. One way is that you're defining success for yourselves.
I need to clap. I know I'm not supposed to clap in the mic. So
insert the clap track.
Clap track right there. Yes, this is so huge when you two are defining success for yourselves. And then we'll see on the contrary with toxic momentum, it is the opposite, but it's so subtle, y'all. It may be like, oh, that's so obvious, but it's so subtle to start building according to someone else's blueprint, right? Are we doing this right because that's how they're doing it? Or are we doing this because this is how we're supposed to do it? Or even how our coaches say we're supposed to do it, but really building according to your blueprint and the thing that you all are called to do in that way. And so it is a process. It is a process. So that is another sign that you're building really with good and healthy momentum. I would say also another sign too, or you can put on the checklist, if you will, is that you're having regular legacy meetings. And so you have a set and regular schedule to talk through what it is and how that you're building. So what we do each day, Monday through Friday anyway, about 10-15 minutes a day, is start off the morning with that. But we have some of our couples that we train in this. They don't do their legacy meetings in the morning. What works for them is that they do it in the early evening. And so as long as you're doing it,
it's not the time of doing it, it's the fact of doing it.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And so just having these check-ins, because otherwise what happens if you don't is everything is like by default, like, oh, I need to talk to you about such and such. And it's just like in passing, or, while we're taking a ride somewhere to go grocery shopping, let me tell you about the business. But that wasn't really the time that you all have set aside to do that.
And let me say that will make you If not now, eventually frustrated. Now,
what will make you frustrated?
Not having those legacy meetings because you don't have any guardrails on your time. You don't have guardrails on your conversation. You don't have guardrails on anything.
Yeah. So those are just some signs. Let me bring this right here so I can see better. Of healthy momentum as married entrepreneurs. Now let's go to
toxic
momentum.
What does that toxic momentum look like?
Toxic momentum, the definition of that we've curated is building at the expense of brokenness.
Yeah, and let me add a slight forward slash on that brokenness. So if good momentum was building, or we define it as building in alignment with the vision, then we could say toxic momentum is building out of alignment with the vision, and that's the brokenness that you're talking about.
Oh yeah, but that brokenness, yes, that vision, brokenness in the vision, that also leads to brokenness in other areas of your lifestyle, right? Of your marriage, of your business. But here's the thing. You can actually be prospering and growing and scaling your business, but your marriage is doing the exact opposite. It's hanging on by a thread.
And for married entrepreneurs, that's not good momentum.
That's not good momentum. You know, on the outside, it can look
if it's good business momentum, but it's not good marriage momentum, then as married entrepreneurs, we don't define it as good momentum.
And that's the difference between entrepreneurs and married entrepreneurs, and really being very clear about who we are as marriedpreneurs. And so now that we've set that in place, let's talk about some signs of toxic momentum for marriedpreneurs. This is a very clear sign when you find that your business is controlling the marriage. Like the business dictates what you can or cannot do. For example, like date nights. Oh, I got to do this. And I mean, there are times when things like that happen, but if that's the norm, then that's a big red flag.
Another sign is that the business will actually control the schedule. And let me use another term. The business will dictate the schedule.
Yeah.
It doesn't care about all those other said marital family priorities. The business says, nope, this is the priority, and it dictates the schedule. That's another sign of toxic momentum.
Yeah. Another sign also of toxic momentum is disorder. Sometimes we can get so accustomed to disorder where we don't realize it's disorder. And so another simple, I guess, what do you call it when there's a symptom of this is called the SOS. This is the shiny object syndrome. So when you have an idea, you all are focused in on it, you're moving forward, and then you see somebody else doing something else that seems to be better. The grass looks greener on the side. Oh, let's try it that way that they're doing. Oh, then you see something. Oh, let's go over there. And meanwhile, you all are not building in the way that you actually could be building because you're jumping.
Yeah, speaking of jumping. So another sign that there's toxic momentum is that you are chasing other people's definition of success. So if good momentum was defining success for your marriage, for your business, the opposite would then be chasing other people's definition of success. And let me say this, whenever we chase other people's definition of success, we will never be fulfilled. We'll never be fulfilled.
That's so good. So the whole point and purpose of this is just to become aware, because even if you all are focused and you're working now, even in that space of primarily of good momentum, that's awesome. But here's the thing. You want to make sure that you are aware also of the toxic signs so that you are able to barricade your marriage from that toxicity, because it's so subtle. It's so subtle. And if we're not aware, we look up and like, what did we actually build? What did we actually build? So, do we have a question over here?
We do have a question.
Oh, we have. I said we're hitting the nail on the head with these. Awesome. Glad you are enjoying these gems. And then we have a quick question. How often should you have a legacy meeting, and should we make sure to talk about certain topics? Yeah, that's a great question. We're going to be going more in detail on that in some future episodes, but let's answer this question because I think it's right on, and you can start doing this right away. This is Ashley. Is it Divine? Yes.
So, I'll take the B part if you want to take the A part.
Okay, yeah, sure. So the A part is how often should you have a legacy meeting? So what we do is we have a type of a a system where we do our annual, right? Okay, where do we believe, and that's the whole process in that, but just in general, where do we believe that we're supposed to be a year from now? Where would God have us to be within our marriage first? This is an easy way to put the marriage center. So you don't go straight to the business. So where do we believe that we're supposed to be in our marriage a year from now? How, what are the things that we need to work on? And then what are those steps that we need to put in place? That's for the annual. And then we look at the business and what that looks like. And if you're an indie spouse or a couplepreneur, that will determine like where the focus is. So if you're a spousal and it's one main business, then you all can talk, of course, about that because you're building that legacy together. And if it's indie and you have multiple businesses or a couple, same thing. You just look at the business. So that's the annual one. And then that annual one will be what would you call like the goalpost for the year?
The year.
And it breaks down the quarterly, right? Because you're able to see, oh, this is the annual. So what do we want this to look like for each quarter? And so then we also have quarterly check-ins. So I'm going over the frequency of them. We run it in this sense like a corporation, right? We have that level of strategy, vision, and foresight and seriousness about it. So we're able to say, okay, this is the goal. And then we put these goals. Okay, God, you're going to have to, you're going to have to bless as we move forward in this. But so we have the annual, then we have the quarterly, then we have the monthly. And then we have, and the monthly is a check-in to see where we've been for the last month. And then what we're doing for the upcoming month as well, too. Then we also have, as the business would have it, we have the weekly. Mm-hmm. And that the weekly ones, maybe we do ours on Sundays now. We should be able to do them with under an hour. And then we have daily Monday through Fridays, mm-hmm. and that's about 10 to 15 minutes. It's really just a check-in, and he's going to go over what it is. But that's just the overarching. So we're running it like a corporation runs their corporation to project and to forecast what the desire for the vision is for our family, for our marriage, and for our businesses.
Yeah. So the areas now, the B part of that question is, and should we make sure we talk about certain topics? Yes, you should make sure you talk about certain topics. Speaking of those topics, let me outline and start off by saying this. The key word is priorities, right? Which means we have to decide and determine what those priorities are. But assuming you've done that, assuming you all have talked about what those priorities are, there are 3 categories for those priorities that are always in our legacy meetings. Not in any particular order, but here they are. Number 1, what is the marriage priority? What is the marriage priority for this year, for this quarter, for this month, for this week, for this day? Right. Mm-hmm. Secondly, then what is the household? What are the household priorities? And so we talk about household priorities, which means basically we're talking, generally speaking, about things surrounding the budget. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
House management. Okay. Mm-hmm. Then thirdly, it deals with the business priorities. Mm-hmm. And so we talk about our business priorities, which typically the top 3 things that we want to get done, that must get done today. And we don't add 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 32 other things, even though we know there are 32 other things.
There are.
We're choosing between those 3 priorities.
Yes. And what happens when we choose those 3 priorities? What happens in our momentum is that we're able to focus in on those top 3 for the day. We know at the end of the day, we're going to be held accountable because we say, okay, how did your top 3 go? That's it, and checking in from there. Now, that's why it takes about 10, 15 minutes, because we would have already done the background work and it becomes a part of our lifestyle. It becomes a part of like how we do it. So those 3 things right there make a huge difference. And anything else that we get done on top of those 3 priorities for that day, I just call them cherries on top. Now, usually we're like, oh my goodness, I don't even know which ones to choose, right? Because everything feels like a priority, but what it does, it requires you to up our discipline. And so we have to decide what are our priorities today so we can know where to focus. The absolutes, like must get done, must show up, must have it checked off the list by the end of the day. And so that's how we build in the momentum, and also knowing like what the healthy momentum looks like for us too, and what that vision is. And I would just give a quick example of that before we close up. When we got married, I guess the 2nd year into our marriage, and let us know if that's helpful for you, Ashley. We hope so. And if you have any other questions, what's that she says, what examples of marriage goals and priorities? Yeah, that's a great question too. So for us, I'll give some real life examples for us. It would be
getaways.
Yeah, our getaways. But we don't actually always have to get away. It could be a devotional. Like this month, we're finishing out a devotional that we should have finished a long time ago.
Funny
but,
subject.
So we'll have like a marriage devotional. So it actually guides us through conversations, certain prayers for one another, with one another, and activities with us, with one another as well too. Another one for us would be just new experiences. Like let's do a cooking class together, just new experience, or we'll do a massage together, or take a massage lesson together so we can give each other massages, like, and know how to do it in the right way, not just be like rubbing each other down, like really
not be trying to be a chiropractor.
Yeah.
Snapping bones thinking we're massaging each other.
Yeah. And like, what is fun for you and your spouse, and what do you all want to work on? Like if it's communication, if it's making more memories, if it's really spending more time talking about you all as a couple, not just like the business as a couple, right? But it's like you all as a couple. So hopefully those examples are helpful for you, but that helps us to really think about, okay, what do we want to do? Like we are married first, right? We are married first, and then the business comes along to support that. And that's really forced us to get to know each other better, and to talk in a more, I would say on a
deeper and more meaningful, more connective way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mentioned earlier, I was going to say this before we wrap it up, but when we're talking about the definition for success and what that looks like for you all, it doesn't have to be based on what everybody else is saying, right? We know that, like cognitively, we know that, but sometimes we start making or taking actions in a way that doesn't necessarily go along with what we want ultimately for success. So one of our definitions for success that we started and then we just like really revisited recently is to have the freedom to take a walk at the park in the middle of the day. I remember thinking and praying about that. Like, Lord, I just wish I would see these other couples in the middle of the day. My husband had to go into the bank. And I said, I just wish that we can just go for a walk in the middle of the day because we can, right? Because we have the freedom. And then when that happened, I was like, wow, this is a definition of success for us. But we let that go to the background over the years. And we recently just brought that back. Like last week, we started going to the park again. I was like, wow, look at this. And I remember you said, man, what if we can just do this more often? I'm like, well, we can. It's like we're the ones who have to put that as a priority or make that as a priority for our marriage, just to get out, get fresh air and be together, right? And outside of business and just doing life. So as you all create your definition for success within your marriedpreneur vision, it really does make a world of difference on how you make your daily decisions. And hopefully that answered your question too, Ashley. You can let us know as well over there on IG. So with that being said, did we cover everything?
I think we did.
So this is just this is like the meat of the podcast. And what we do next is we're going over to the Enjoying the Journey Together segment, where we're going to walk you all through actionable steps that you can apply right away. Now that part will not be live. That will be aired or will
in the episode
when this comes out later on, actually in a few months. And so awesome. Oh, really? She said, yes, thanks. And you're one of our first followers. Wow. Love you. Oh, we love you back. Well, thank you. Thank you for being on this crazy, whimsical journey. Faith-filled.
One of our first. Thank you for still being here.
Like you are OG, huh?
Right.
Welcome.
You're a marriedpreneur lifer.
You're a marriedpreneur lifer. So anyway, until next time, you all
keep living purposefully,
powerfully,
and profitably
in sync. Peace out. Y'all have a good one. Wrong.